Trevor Harrington thought he'd struck gold when he landed his high-paying job at Bellwether Holdings. What he didn't know was that his poor wife, the woman he was ashamed to introduce at company events, was actually the largest shareholder of the very company signing his paychecks. Tonight, he's bringing his glamorous girlfriend to the exclusive Founders Gala, desperate to network his way into the elite lounge upstairs. But when the CEO takes the stage and thanks the board members by name, Trevor's entire world is about to shatter in front of 200 witnesses. Sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who holds all the power. Welcome, friends, to a story about hidden power, quiet strength, and the moment when arrogance meets reality. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed by someone who didn't know your worth, this story is going to resonate with you deeply. I genuinely believe this tale will shift something in how you see success and humility, and I'd be honored if you'd consider subscribing and hitting that like button right now. Not because I'm asking, but because stories like this, stories that reveal truth, deserve to be shared. Your support helps us create more content that celebrates the quiet victories of people who don't need to prove themselves. Now, let me take you into Trevor's world, where everything he thought he knew is about to be turned upside down. Let's begin. June, I need you to do something for me. Trevor Harrington didn't look up from his phone. His wife stood in the doorway of their study. She's still in her grey cardigan and house slippers, the same ones she'd worn every evening for 3 years. Vanessa needs help preparing for the Founders Gala. You know, styling, makeup, that sort of thing. She's never been to an event like this. June Mercer set down the ceramic mug she'd been holding. The tea inside had gone cold 20 minutes ago. "The gala at Bellwether Holdings," she said. "Not a question." "That's the one." Trevor finally glanced up, his Patek Philippe catching the lamplight. "It's black tie, very exclusive. I can't have her looking out of place." June studied her husband. 6 years of marriage. 6 years of him introducing her as "my wife," in the tone someone might use for "my dentist." Necessary, forgettable, slightly embarrassing. "You're taking Vanessa to the gala." "She's my director of marketing. It's a business function." He returned to his phone. "You wouldn't understand the networking involved. These events have wait lists that span 18 months. The guest list is curated by people who manage sovereign wealth funds." June's fingers tightened around the mug. "I see. Good. I'll give you her number. She's free tomorrow afternoon." Trevor stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "And June, don't mention this to anyone at the office. It would look inappropriate." He left. The door clicked shut with the pneumatic hiss of German engineering. $15,000 for soundproofing that made arguments disappear. Trevor Harrington believed in visible success. His car, a Bentley Continental GT with custom navy lacquer, the kind of finish that required 6 weeks in Bavaria. His watch, the Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime, reference 6300G, you're acquired through a relationship with a Geneva dealer who personally vetted clients. His office, the 47th floor of Bellwether Tower, positioned exactly 3 floors below the C-suite. Close enough to matter, distant enough to hunger. His wife drove a 12-year-old Volvo sedan with 140,000 miles on the odometer. This, to Trevor, was the central failure of his marriage. He'd met June at a private equity mixer in Boston. She'd been standing near the hors d'oeuvres, wearing an off-the-rack dress and drinking sparkling water. She'd asked intelligent questions about his work in capital allocation. She'd listened. She hadn't name-dropped her alma mater or her father's firm. Trevor had found this refreshing. What he'd interpreted as modesty was something else entirely. A June Mercer had been raised in the kind of wealth that didn't require affirmation. Her grandfather had started a timber concern in Oregon in 1947. By 1980, it was the third largest private landowner in the Pacific Northwest. Her father had converted those holdings into a real estate portfolio that generated income streams through 17 separate family offices. The structures were Byzantine, trusts within trusts, offshore vehicles in Bermuda and the Caymans, nominee directors in Singapore. When June turned 25, she'd received her inheritance, not in cash, not in a wire transfer, in a series of ownership instruments that most lawyers couldn't pass without 3 weeks of due diligence. She controlled $2.3 billion in assets. She'd never mentioned this to her husband, not out of secrecy, out of irrelevance. And in the world June inhabited, the world of family offices and generational planning, you didn't talk about money. You talked about conservation easements, tax harvesting strategies, philanthropic vehicles structured as private operating foundations. The Volvo wasn't a choice born from poverty. It was a choice born from not caring what strangers thought when she parked. Trevor had never asked about her family's business. He'd assumed from her lack of interest in luxury goods that she came from comfortable but unexceptional circumstances. A professor's daughter, maybe, or a mid-level diplomat. He had no idea she owned the building where they lived, or that Bellwether Holdings, the company where he worked, was 40% owned by an entity called Mercer Capital Ventures, or that June sat on the board, or that she was, in fact, the largest single shareholder. The next afternoon, June met Vanessa Cho at a boutique in Back Bay. Vanessa was 28. She had the kind of beauty that photographs well: sharp cheekbones, a degree from Parsons, an Instagram account with 47,000 followers. She greeted June with the synthetic warmth of someone who'd been coached on executive presence. "You must be June. Trevor's told me so much about you." June shook her hand. "I'm sure." They spent 2 hours moving through racks of evening wear. Vanessa tried on a burgundy gown with a dramatic neckline, a silver sheath with architectural shoulders, a black number with a slit that climbed to mid-thigh. "What do you think?" Vanessa asked, twirling in front of the mirror. "The black is elegant," June said. "Trevor says the gala is the event of the season, and he's been talking about it for weeks." Vanessa examined her reflection. "I can't believe I'm going. Do you know how exclusive it is? They vet every single guest." "I've heard. Trevor says there's a primary list and a secondary list. The primary list gets access to the Founders Lounge. That's where the real networking happens. Apparently, there's a separate entrance." June nodded. "He's on the secondary list," Vanessa continued, "but he's hoping to network his way up. He thinks if we make the right impression, we might get pulled into the private reception." "That's ambitious." "He's very driven." Vanessa smiled. "That's what I love about him." June felt something cold settle in her chest. Not surprise, not anger, just a dull, factual acknowledgement of what this was. "The black dress," she said. "It suits you." That evening, Trevor came home late. He smelled like bourbon and the particular cologne Vanessa wore, something with bergamot and cedar. "How'd it go?" he asked. "She found a dress." "Good." He loosened his tie. "I appreciate you helping. I know it's awkward, but Vanessa doesn't have anyone else to ask. Her family's in California." June closed the book she'd been reading. "Trevor, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you love her?" He paused. Not long enough to deny it. Just long enough to calculate the least damaging answer. It's not about love. It's about compatibility. Vanessa understands my world. She's ambitious. She pushes me to be better. He sat on the edge of the bed. You and I, we've grown apart. You know that. Because I don't care about the right things. Because you don't care about anything. His voice sharpened. You drive that car. You wear those clothes. You spend your time reading and volunteering at that library. Do you know how that looks? I'm trying to build something, June. I'm trying to matter. And you're just coasting. She looked at him, really looked. The man she'd married had wanted her because she'd seemed calm, unbothered, secure. Now he hated her for the same reasons. I see, she said. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just being honest. After the gala, we should probably talk about next steps. Next steps? A separation, maybe permanent. I'll be fair about the assets. You'll be fine. June nodded. Okay. Trevor seemed relieved. He'd expected tears, maybe. Anger. Instead, she'd given him permission. He went to bed. June stayed in the study, staring at the wall. At 11:30, her phone buzzed. A message from her attorney, Gideon Reese. The quarterly board meeting confirmed for Friday. Agenda includes executive review. June typed back, I'll be there. The Founders Gala was 48 hours away. Trevor had started preparing 3 weeks ago. He'd hired a stylist to select his tuxedo, a midnight blue number from Anderson and Shepherd on Savile Row, fitted twice to account for the exact drape across his shoulders. He'd scheduled a haircut with a barber who'd trained in Milan. He'd bought new shoes, John Lobb Oxfords, black, so polished they caught reflections like still water. This was his moment. He'd been at Bellwether Holdings for 6 years, climbing from analyst to senior director. He managed a team of 11. He reported to a VP, who reported to the CFO. He was, by every conventional metric, successful. But success wasn't enough. Trevor wanted access, the kind that came with private dinners at per se, invitations to charity auctions where the lots started at 6 figures, membership at clubs that didn't advertise their existence. The Founders Gala was the gateway. Every year, Bellwether hosted the event at their headquarters, a glass tower in the financial district designed by an architect who'd won a Pritzker Prize. The guest list included venture capitalists, hedge fund managers, and a handful of politicians who'd learned to dress well. Attendance was by invitation only. The invitations were physical, heavy cardstock, 600 grams per square meter, letterpress printed on Belgian paper. They didn't bend. Trevor's invitation had arrived 6 weeks ago. It listed him as a Tier 2 guest. Tier 2 meant the main ballroom, open bar, past appetizers, a jazz quartet, respectable, adequate. Would Tier 1 meant the Founders Lounge. That's where the CEO gave his remarks, where the board mingled, where deals were shaped in conversations that lasted 90 seconds. Trevor's plan was simple: arrive early, network aggressively, and position himself near the lounge entrance. If he could get noticed by someone with access, a board member maybe, or one of the senior VPs, he might get pulled in. Vanessa was the perfect accessory. She was beautiful, charming, and knew when to laugh at jokes that weren't funny. Trevor had spent the last 2 weeks coaching her on names, faces, and conversation topics. She'd memorized the board members. She knew which VPs were in favor, which were on thin ice. She'd practiced her handshake in the mirror. Remember, Trevor said over lunch the day before the gala, this isn't about us having fun. This is about positioning. Smile, engage, but don't dominate conversations. Let them talk. People love talking about themselves. Vanessa nodded. What if someone asks about us? Tell them we're colleagues. If they press, say we've been seeing each other casually. Keep it vague. And June? She's irrelevant. We're separated essentially. After this weekend, it'll be official. Vanessa reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you. Trevor smiled. That evening, June received an email from Bellwether's event coordinator. Ms. Mercer, confirming your attendance at the Founders Gala. Your credentials and parking pass are attached. Please use the east entrance. Executive access. Security will meet you at 6:45 p.m. She read it twice. Then she called Gideon Reese. They're still routing my invitations through corporate events, she said. That's correct. You asked for anonymity protocols. All correspondence goes through neutral channels. Trevor will be there. I'm aware. He doesn't know. There was a pause. Gideon Reese had been the Mercer family's attorney for 23 years. He'd structured trusts, negotiated acquisitions, and once spent 6 months unwinding a tax liability that would have bankrupted a smaller firm. He was not easily surprised. You haven't told him, he said. No. June, this is going to be uncomfortable. I know. He works for the company. He'll find out eventually. Let him find out at the gala. Another pause. This is punitive, Gideon said. This is clarity. Understood. I'll inform security. Do you want him removed from the premises? No. Let him stay. Let him see. Gideon hung up. June stared at her phone. She wasn't angry. Anger was reactive, emotional, wasteful. What she felt was something colder, the precise calculation of consequences. Trevor had treated their marriage like a liability to be managed. He'd assigned her a value, low, negligible, and acted accordingly. Now he would learn what she was actually worth. The day of the gala arrived. Trevor woke at 6. He went for a run. 4 miles, timed. He showered, shaved with a straight razor, applied moisturizer. He spent 20 minutes on his hair. At noon, he picked up his tuxedo from the cleaners. At 2, he confirmed his reservation at a steakhouse downtown, where he'd take Vanessa before the event. June, meanwhile, spent the day reading. She wore sweatpants and an old sweater. She made tea. She sat in the sunroom and worked through a biography of Katharine Graham, the publisher who'd transformed the Washington Post. At 4 o'clock, she took a bath. At 5, she began getting ready. Trevor had already left. He'd kissed her on the forehead on his way out. An old habit, meaningless now, and told her not to wait up. June opened her closet. Most of her wardrobe was practical. Jeans, cardigans, simple dresses. But in the back, behind a garment bag, hung a gown she'd commissioned 2 years ago for a museum benefit. It was navy silk, floor-length, with a high neckline and no embellishment. The fabric had been woven in lion. The cut was architectural, sharp, precise, designed to photograph well under scrutiny. She put it on. Then she did her makeup. Not heavy, just enough to define her features. She brushed her hair back into a low chignon. She put on diamond studs, small, inherited from her grandmother. No necklace, no bracelet. At 6:30, she drove to Bellwether Tower. The Volvo pulled into the underground executive garage. A security officer was waiting. Bellwether Tower had 2 entrances the night of the gala. The main entrance, on Washington Street, was where Tier 2 guests arrived. A red carpet had been rolled out. Photographers clustered near the door. Though they were local press, no one who'd ever shot for Vogue. The attendees queued politely, showing their invitations to security personnel who scanned QR codes and checked names against tablets. Inside, the ballroom glowed, crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, centerpieces of orchids flown in from Ecuador. A jazz trio played near the bar. Servers circulated with trays of champagne and canapes, smoked salmon on blini, beef tartare, truffle-infused arancini. Trevor and Vanessa arrived at 7:15. She looked exceptional. The black dress fit perfectly. Her hair was swept up, her makeup flawless. Trevor walked beside her with the easy confidence of someone who believed he belonged. He shook hands. He introduced Vanessa as his colleague. He laughed at the right moments. "This is incredible," Vanessa whispered. "Just wait," Trevor said. "The real action is upstairs." He'd scoped out the layout. The Founders Lounge was on the 50th floor, 3 stories above the ballroom. Access was restricted. There were 2 elevators, both staffed by security. Only guests with Tier 1 credentials could enter. Trevor's strategy was to network his way to an introduction. Wonder if he could get FaceTime with one of the VPs, someone who remembered his work on the Q3 earnings call. Maybe he might get invited up. He spotted Richard Dalton, the CFO, near the bar. "Mr. Dalton," Trevor said, extending his hand. "Trevor Harrington, Senior Director, Capital Markets." Dalton shook his hand. "Of course. Good to see you. This is Vanessa Cho, our Director of Marketing." "Pleasure." Dalton nodded. He was already looking past them. "I wanted to say," Trevor continued, "the work we did on the Meridian acquisition, your leadership on that, was masterful. The way you structured the debt financing, particularly the tranches, appreciate that." Dalton glanced at his watch. "Excuse me, I need to head upstairs." He walked away. Trevor watched him go, jaw tight. "That was fast," Vanessa said. "He's busy. We'll try someone else." But the pattern repeated. Every senior executive Trevor approached was polite, distracted, and gone within 90 seconds. They all had somewhere else to be. The lounge, the place Trevor couldn't access. By 8 o'clock, his frustration was visible. "We should just enjoy the evening," Vanessa suggested. "No, this is the night. If I don't make an impression now, I'm stuck at this level forever." He scanned the room. Then he saw it. The elevator to the Founders Lounge. The doors were open. A security guard stood beside them, checking credentials. Trevor approached. "Evening," he said. "Trevor Harrington, Senior Director. I was hoping to join the reception upstairs." The guard didn't smile. "Do you have Tier 1 credentials?" "Not technically, but I work closely with the CFO. I'm sure if you check, I need to see credentials." Trevor's smile stiffened. "Can you make an exception?" "No, sir." Behind him, Vanessa touched his arm. "Trevor, let's go." He turned away, humiliated. What Trevor didn't see, the east entrance. June had arrived at 6:45, exactly as instructed. She'd parked in the executive garage. A security officer had escorted her to a private elevator, not the one in the lobby, but a service lift used by board members and C-suite personnel. It opened directly into the Founders Lounge. The lounge was everything the ballroom was not. 40 people, maximum. No photographers, no servers with trays. Instead, there was a private chef preparing plates to order. A sommelier pouring wines from bottles that didn't have price tags because the people in this room didn't ask. The furniture was mid-century modern. Eames chairs, a Noguchi table, lighting by Ingo Maurer. The walls were floor-to-ceiling glass. The view stretched from Boston Harbor to Cambridge, the city lights sprawling like a constellation. June accepted a glass of champagne. She recognized most of the guests. Andrew Carmichael, Bellwether's CEO, was speaking with a venture capitalist from Sequoia. Diane Hurst, the general counsel, stood near the windows. Richard Dalton had just arrived, still flushed from his encounter downstairs. June. Andrew crossed the room, hand extended. Glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it. You look well. How's the conservation project in Oregon? Progressing. We're negotiating an easement with the state. Should be finalized by March. Good, good. He lowered his voice. I wanted to talk to you about the quarterly review. There's a personnel matter we should discuss. I read the files, and let's table it for tonight. We can address it Monday. Andrew nodded. He knew better than to press. June moved through the room. She spoke with Diane about a compliance audit. She congratulated a board member on his daughter's admission to Stanford. She tasted a piece of seared tuna, prepared tableside. The fish so fresh it had been swimming 36 hours ago. No one stared. No one asked who she was. In this room, she was known. Downstairs, Trevor was drowning. He'd tried 3 more times to network his way to an introduction. Each attempt had failed. The executives he approached were cordial but uninterested. They had meetings to attend, people to see. Trevor was furniture. By 9, he'd stopped trying. He and Vanessa stood near the edge of the ballroom, watching the crowd thin as more guests migrated upstairs. I don't understand, Vanessa said quietly. Your senior leadership. Why aren't we invited up? Trevor drained his champagne. Because I'm not important enough. That's not true. It is. I've been lying to myself. I thought if I worked hard, if I played the game, I'd get access. But access isn't earned. It's inherited. You either have it or you don't. Vanessa didn't respond. She looked uncomfortable. At 9:30, Andrew Carmichael's voice echoed through the ballroom. An announcement. The CEO would be giving remarks in the Founders Lounge. Guests in the main event were welcome to watch via live stream on the monitors. Trevor stared at the screen as it flickered to life. The camera panned across the lounge. He saw the Eames chairs, the view, the small, elite crowd. And then he saw something that made his breath stop. June. She was standing near the windows, speaking with Andrew Carmichael. She was laughing. She looked comfortable. At home. Is that? Vanessa started. Trevor couldn't speak. Andrew stepped to a microphone. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Before I begin, I want to recognize someone who's been instrumental in Bellwether's growth. June Mercer, our largest shareholder and a member of the board. June, thank you for your continued partnership. The camera zoomed in. June raised her glass in acknowledgement. The crowd applauded. Trevor felt the floor tilt. Vanessa grabbed Trevor's arm. Did he just say June Mercer? Yes. Your wife June? Trevor's throat was dry. That's her. She's on the board? Apparently. Trevor, how do you not know your wife is on the board of the company you work for? He didn't have an answer. On the screen, Andrew continued. Bellwether has had a record year. Revenue up 18%. 3 acquisitions closed. We're positioned for continued growth, thanks in large part to the strategic vision of our board. The camera cut to the board members. June was among them, seated between a former Treasury Secretary and the CEO of a pharmaceutical company. She looked serene, unbothered. Trevor turned and walked toward the exit. Where are you going? Vanessa called after him. I need air. He pushed through the doors and into the lobby. His heart was pounding. His mind raced through every conversation, Every interaction, every dismissive comment he'd made about June's lack of ambition. The Volvo, the cardigans, the library volunteer work. She'd never needed to prove anything, because she already owned it. Trevor found a bench and sat. He stared at the marble floor. Vanessa appeared beside him. "Talk to me." "I've made a mistake," he said. "What kind of mistake?" "Every kind." At 10 o'clock, the gala ended. Guests began filtering out. Trevor and Vanessa remained in the lobby, waiting. He didn't know what for. He just couldn't leave. At 10:20, the private elevator doors opened. June stepped out. She saw Trevor immediately. She crossed the lobby. "June," he started. "Trevor." She stopped in front of him. Her expression was neutral. "Did you enjoy the evening?" He didn't know what to say. Vanessa stood beside him, silent. Why didn't you tell me?" Trevor asked. "You never asked." "That's not fair, isn't it? You spent 6 years working at a company I helped build. You never once wondered who controlled it. You assumed it was someone else, someone important, someone who mattered." Trevor flinched. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For everything. For not seeing you. For not appreciating—" "Trevor." She cut him off. "I don't need your apology. I need you to understand something. You wanted access. You wanted to be in that room upstairs. But you can't earn your way into spaces like that. You're either invited or you're not. I know that now. Do you? Because I don't think you do. You think this is about money. It's not. It's about respect. You treated me like I was irrelevant. You brought your girlfriend to a company event and asked me to help her get dressed for it. You humiliated me." Her voice didn't rise. It stayed calm, measured. That made it worse. Vanessa stepped forward. "Miss Mercer, I didn't know—" "I'm aware." June glanced at her. "You're very beautiful, Vanessa. I'm sure you'll do well. But not here." Vanessa paled. "What do you mean?" "I mean your employment at Bellwether is ending. HR will contact you Monday with severance details." "You can't—" "I can, and I am." Vanessa looked at Trevor. He said nothing. She turned and walked toward the exit. June and Trevor stood alone in the lobby. "What happens to me?" he asked. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you can accept reality. You're good at your job, Trevor. You're smart. You're competent. But you're not exceptional. You never will be. You can stay at Bellwether, keep your position, and do solid work. Or you can leave and try to find somewhere that values ambition over ability. You're letting me stay? For now. Andrew thinks you have potential. I'm inclined to trust his judgment." Trevor nodded. He felt numb. "And us?" he asked. June considered. "We'll separate. I'll handle the paperwork. You'll keep the Bentley. I'll keep the apartment." "You own the apartment." "I own the building." He closed his eyes. "I really am sorry," he said. "I believe you." June walked past him, toward the exit. She paused at the door. "One more thing," she said. "What?" "The Patek Philippe. You bought it on credit, didn't you?" Trevor's face went red. "How did you—" "I pay attention. You should try it sometime." She left. Trevor stood in the empty lobby. The marble floor gleamed. The chandeliers hummed. Outside, the city lights stretched in every direction, cold and indifferent. He looked at his watch. The Grandmaster chime, reference 6300G. He'd told people it was a gift. In truth, he'd financed it over 3 years. He still owed $40,000. He took it off and held it in his palm. Trevor Harrington moved out of the Bellwether apartment in January. He found a 1-bedroom in Somerville. The rent was manageable. The commute was 40 minutes. He sold the Bentley and bought a used Audi. He paid off the watch and put it in a safety deposit box. He didn't wear it anymore. At work, nothing changed. His title remained the same. His responsibilities stayed consistent. But the way people looked at him was different. Everyone knew. Not the details, HR had been discreet, but the general shape of it. Trevor Harrington had been married to June Mercer. He hadn't known who she was. The story spread through the office like smoke. He didn't try to explain. There was no explanation that didn't make him look worse. In March, he submitted his resignation. Andrew Carmichael accepted it without trying to change his mind. Trevor took a position at a smaller firm. The pay was lower. The prestige was non-existent, but it was clean. No one there knew his history. He didn't date. He didn't network. He worked, went home, and read. One Saturday in April, he ran into June at a bookstore in Cambridge. She was in the history section, holding a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt. She wore jeans and a sweater. She looked the same. "June," he said. She turned. "Trevor. How are you?" "Good. You?" "Better. I'm at a new firm. Smaller. And quieter." "That's good." They stood in silence. "I think about that night," Trevor said. "The gala." "Do you?" "I was so focused on getting into that room. I didn't realize I was already married to the person who owned it." June nodded. "That's accurate. I'm sorry for all of it." "I know. Do you forgive me?" She looked at him. Her expression was kind, but distant. "I don't think about you enough to forgive you," she said, "but I hope you're well." She paid for her book and left. Trevor stood in the aisle for a long time. Then he picked up a book, a guide to personal finance, and went to the counter. He was learning, slowly, what mattered. It wasn't the watch. It wasn't the car. It wasn't the room upstairs. It was knowing when you already had everything you needed and recognizing it before it was gone. And there it is. The moment Trevor Harrington learned that power doesn't announce itself, it simply exists. June didn't need designer clothes, luxury cars, or Instagram followers to matter. She had something far more valuable: substance. Here's my challenge to you, and I mean this sincerely. If this story made you think differently about judging people by appearances, if it reminded you that quiet strength is real strength, then prove it. Hit that like button. Not for me, but as a personal commitment to look deeper at the people around you. Subscribe if you believe there are more stories like this that need to be told. Stories where humility wins and arrogance loses. And here's the real dare. Drop a comment telling me about a time you were underestimated. I'll read every single one, and the best story gets featured in our next video. The people who truly understand this lesson don't just watch and leave. They engage, they reflect, they grow. So the question is, are you just passing through, or are you someone who gets it? Show me. I'll see you in the comments, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest. Don't forget it.